Hello and welcome back to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Ford Consul. Welcome back, and like I say, this is a car brochure channel. We look at car brochures from around the world for various vehicles. So if you've got any interest in that, please do consider subscribing, as I'm sure there'll be some interest to you, and also it does help grow the channel. So back to today's episode, the Ford Consul. Ford Consul was originally produced by Ford of Britain between 1951 and 1962. However, this is not the group of cars we're looking at today. The group of cars we're looking at is more of a Ford Granada based vehicle, and it was produced by Ford UK and Ford of Germany between 1972 and 1975. It was there just as a very low spec, lower price version of the new Mk1 Ford Granada that had just been introduced. But let's have a look at today's brochure from 1974, and we'll pick out some key points and we'll learn a bit more about this sort of forgotten nameplate. So there we go, today's brochure, and there we can see this Ford Consul. So I suppose the first question is to answer, why weren't they just all called Ford Granadas? It makes more sense just to have a base Granada going all the way up to a gear. Why split them like this? Well, some people would say it was to do with sort of badge engineering, but I think it was more than that. At the time there was a bit of a lawsuit against Ford for the Granada name by something called Britain's Granada Group. So they were saying, well, why are you stealing our name? But this was all settled in sort of like late 75, and then all Ford Granadas were called Ford Granadas, and this Ford Consul name was lost. So I think Ford were kind of like hedging their bets if they could win the right to use the name Granada. If they had lost the name to use the word Granada, the Consul would probably have been the name used throughout the production of the Ford Granada. But of course, the Consul was the basic model, so the Consul name was dropped, and the rest is history, so to speak. I think the easiest way to identify these early Ford Consuls is from this grille. You can see it's very much a different grille to what we're used to seeing on the Mk1 Ford Granadas. A very unusual title for this brochure. Remember, the Consuls were the most basic ones, and extremely basic they were, as we'll see in this brochure. And it says up here, luxury accommodation, ideal family unit. Kind of like thinking, are they talking about this house? Surely can't be talking about this Consul, because it certainly was not a luxury vehicle. Although ideal family unit, it was a very spacious car. But anyway, enough waffle, let's look inside the brochure. And straight away we're welcomed with this very nice side view of this Ford Consul in this very 70s colour. We'll have a look at some of this text and see how it's trying to sell this particular model. So it's saying here, for the family man who's thinking of moving into something new, apologies. All these older 70s brochures always refer to a man making all the decisions and the one buying the car. Do apologise. Happily, we've moved on a bit from that, but yeah, I do apologise. It's only referring to a man here. The Ford Consul can't be beaten for value. It is roomy, stylish and safe. Its trim exterior disguises real family room inside and room for real family luggage in the spacious boot. So kind of like the theme of this brochure is all referring to this, buying this car as more like buying a house. All the Ford models in the Consul range offer smooth, quiet and fatigue-free motoring, especially on long journeys like holidays when children quickly get tired and irritable in lesser cars. All have reclining front seats, and there's a choice of engine sizes, like the Granada, with a big V6 at the top end, which makes sure that your good friends the Joneses will have to go quite a bit to keep up with you. But it's the way the Ford Consul range has been built that really sets it apart from its neighbours. The whole construction is subject to the most stringent safety engineering. Collapsible steering column, child-proof locks, flush switches, recessed instruments, full-width crash padding, and not an unnecessary protrusion anywhere. With the Ford Consul, you are sure of a safer view in bad weather. There is electronically operated wash-wipe facility controlled from a fascia-mounted switch, and because you have to be alert to be safe, new ambient air ventilation delivers warm or cool air at face level from eyeball-type ventilators mounted in the fascia. When you invest in a Ford Consul, you get something your family can grow up in safety. I kind of feel a little bit sorry for the writers of this brochure because they really struggled to pick any sort of features out here. They're talking about padding on the dashboard and, you get cool and warm air at your face. So they're really clutching at straws because remember, these are the really most basic Granadas. And in this first page, it is just the Ford Consul. It's not even the L model, the most basic of the basic. On here it's also saying the radio shown on this model is an optional extra cost, referring to this little aerial here. So the Ford Consul, a very desirable property. And then we move up a model. So yes, there was just the Ford Consul, and now we're on the Ford Consul L, spacious family size sitting room. With a Ford Consul L, or any Ford Consul for that matter, there's no problem about taking everyone along, even if they're all a bit extravagant with their luggage. The 24.7 cubic feet boot copes happily. But big car space calls for big car ride. Don't worry, in the Ford Consul it's as smooth as silk. Wide track, long wheelbase and all-round independent suspension. See to that. So if Dad, like so many others, uses the Consul 5 days a week to get about his business, he's not likely to tire of it either. With the L, you get style as well as comfort. This is a car you'll be proud of, not just to be in, but to be seen in. There are fitted mat pockets, a heated rear window, a clock, and lockable illuminated glove compartments. The rear view mirror adjusts for day or night driving, and there's a vanity mirror on the passenger sun visor. Outside, there are reversing lamps incorporated into the rear light cluster, and overriders with protected rubber inserts, plus halogen headlamps. So only very basic items, a vanity mirror on your passenger sun visor of all things. So yeah, still extremely basic, and it says at the side here, the radio and automatic gearbox fitted on this model are options available at extra costs. So let's have a look at the picture. And the picture is actually showing the interior of this Consul L. You can just make out the Consul name and a little L badge on there. It doesn't look bad, does it? All in black like this. Very 70s, of course. And this little very high mounted radio, which it's referring to as an optional extra. And then we get to this, which is probably the most interesting Consul for me, and a little bit of a clever bit of marketing as well. The Ford Consul GT, 3-litre V6 engine on there, and the fact it was around about £110 lighter than the equivalent higher spec Granada meant it was actually faster than the Granada. So a very little bit of an interesting little, almost like a cult car, this one. No power steering or anything like that. This was super basic. So yeah, I always think this the Consul GT was the interesting car, and certainly the car to get, even possibly above the Granadas themselves. It mentions here these little wing mirrors, which were actually available as accessories. It mentions the radio again being an optional extra, but it did look quite a little bit something different with these little wing mirrors all the way at the front there. It's, you know, I think it's quite an interesting little car. But anyway, enough waffle. Let's have a look, see what the writers actually said about it. So 0 to 60 in 9 seconds. It moves all the way to 113 miles per hour. I don't think that was bad for the early part of the 70s. The Ford Consul GT is powered by the famous Ford V6 138 brake horsepower engine, and special upgraded suspension matches this power on the road. It then talks a little bit about the wheels and tyres, then goes on to say, inside you know what to expect even before you start to move. The padded fascia features a comprehensive instrument panel, oil pressure gauge, tachometer, ammeter, in addition to the standard Ford Consul L instrumentation. And from the relaxed driving position, this simulated leather trimmed gear shift sits perfectly under the hand. The steering wheel is trimmed in simulated leather too. Outside, twin halogen auxiliary driving lamps are mounted up from a distinctive black grille. The Ford Consul GT confirmed yet again Ford's reputation worldwide for advanced engineering design at an unbeatable value for money. The sheer good looks come as a bonus. I think the GT, when it came out, was around about £1,780 or so, I hear. So it was also an affordable car. And yes, you can see that sort of black grille that differs from other consoles and these nice driving lights. It says here, the Ford Consul GT for people with the urge to move. Then we move on to this, the Ford Consul L Estate, handy for shops, schools, etc. So an extremely practical family load lugger was also available under the Consul name. We get various little images of this particular model. At the top here, you probably can't read it, but it says the radio, wheel covers and inertia rear seat belts fitted on this model are options available at extra cost, but still nice to have the option of those rear seat belts and these rather fancy chrome or chrome looking wheel covers on this particular model. Again, we'll have a look at some of this text. Again, sticking with the house buying theme, it says, as any estate agent will tell you, you always need more space than you think you do. The afternoon you decide to stock up at the freezer shop, get half a dozen bedding plants from the nursery, collect the kids from football and take the dog along. You'll see why the Ford made the Consul L Estate one of the roomiest around. Behind the rear seats, which by the way are as comfortable as the saloon model, there's a spacious 41.7 cubic feet of space. But for those extra bulky loads, the rear seats fold down and the space available goes up to a cavernous 77 cubic feet. And all that space is gettable. A top hinged rear tail rear door swings up easily. Its pneumatic assisters make sure of easy opening and closing, and there before you is a broad, flat, rubber-covered load space. The Ford Consul L Estate has loads of space and lots of luxury. Ask any estate owner. I guess sit in a similar vein as your estate agent. I think a bit of, I'm not sure about lots of luxury, but we're trying to sell something here, aren't we? On the back pages, instead of calling this the specification page, we're sticking with the house owner's theme and calling it the fixtures and fittings. So let's have a look at some of those fixtures and fittings on this model. So as before, we've got the basic model called the Consul Saloons, the Consul L, the Consul GT and the Consul Estate car. So Consul Saloons It's a 4-door car with available of a 2000 V4 or a 2.5 V6, and you can see the Consul L has got exactly the same equipment on there. If we go down, we will then see the Consul GT, and the Consul GT, as you can see, is available with a 3-litre V6, and then we've got the Consul Estate car, which has got the 2.5-litre V6. And at the bottom there, just a little bit of an idea of some of the dimensions. Then on the opposite page, it talks to us a little bit about the suspension, wheels and tyres, exterior equipment and interior equipment. We're not going to go through the full list of interior and exterior equipment, but of course you can pause this at any time if you want to read that. The top one, of course, being the base, the Consul Saloon. The next one down being the Consul L. And then if we move it further down, the top one this time is the Consul GT. The one lower is the Consul Estate. Again, similar sort of thing. If you do want to read that, you certainly can pause this at any time. I think you can just about make it out on this particular video. Then it gives you some idea of some of the options that actually are available in the various models. I'm assuming O is option, S is standard, NA not applicable. And they're the 4 models: the Consul, the Consul L, Consul GT, and of course the Consul Estate. And then further down, some of the engine data for the 3 engine sizes available at this time: the 1996 V4, the 2495 V6, and that big 2994cc V6 on that GT model. And then the usual sort of waffle on the back of these brochures, finally ending in the date of this one, January 1974. So there we go, the Ford Consul. It's nice to remember these sort of like forgotten names and remind you that there was something that was a Granada that wasn't a Granada. And who knows, the Consul name may well have been the name for all the Granadas. Let me know in the comments if you've got any memories of the Ford Consul or indeed the Ford Granada Mark 1, and we'll see you very soon. But for now, we'll say please do like and subscribe. Take care and goodbye.